Hi, I'm Emily from Homemade Emily Jane. Today's tutorial I'm going to teach you how to make this super easy Christmas card using fabric scraps and your sewing machine. Before we begin, I want to invite you to go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also feel free to follow me along on social media. You can find me anywhere with @HomemadeEmilyJane. The supplies that you need to make this Christmas card are very simple. First, go to homemadeemilyjane.com and download the free PDF templates and then print them out on your home printer. I printed mine onto 65 weight cardstock, but you can use whatever paper you have available. Next, gather your fabric scraps. I used 6 different shades of green fabrics, a brown fabric, and a gold fabric. These are all connecting threads, blenders, and solids, and I'll link to some of them in the description below. And finally, thread and a sewing machine. Use whatever sewing machine you have and just set your stitch length extra long. And that's pretty much all you need. I'll go ahead and show you how it's done now. In the description below, you'll find a link to the Homemade Emily Jane website, which has a free PDF download for you to print out these 3 different selections for Christmas cards that you can make. So for this example, we'll go ahead and put a tree on one. But there's lots of blank space here as well. You'll end up folding it in half like this one, and then you have the whole inside to write your note to your loved one. So before we begin sewing, we'll go ahead and take our scraps. You'll see I've already pre-cut them into some different sizes, but we might need to trim them a little bit further. But we'll start off by laying out our sizes. So we'll start off with a little tree trunk at the bottom, right like here. And then we start with longer strips, and then we get shorter. So here's one, and then I've got some other longer ones. These are the same length though. So what I'll do is just come off to this side here and trim off about a ½ inch or so to make it a little bit shorter so that the tree gets skinnier as it goes up. And so we'll just continue laying out our little scraps. This one will cut off probably about 1 inch. But the great thing about this is it's completely improv and can be as scrappy as you like. And then finally we'll have a gold star at the top. You'll see on this one, the way I cut this was just with a pair of scissors, and you can tell it definitely doesn't look perfect, but that's kind of how I enjoy doing it. So now I'll show you how I cut this star. So now you'll see it's definitely not perfect, but I kind of love how it's wonky and definitely looks homemade. So that is what will end up getting sewed to the top of the tree. So now that we have our basic design chosen, we'll get rid of all the extra scraps, and we'll start off at the sewing machine. As you see here, I'm at my sewing machine. I have just white thread in my bobbin and in the top of my machine, and my stitch is set to 4.5 on my machine. So I have my whole layout here. I'm going to go ahead and remove all of them except for the bottom, and I work from the bottom up. And it's important here to know that it's going to look a little wonky, and that's kind of the fun. So I keep my base here, and then I just feed it through the machine like so, and I'll stitch across from the very end over the edge of the piece that I'm sewing. When you get to the end, just cut your thread. Now you grab your next piece that's going at the base of your trunk and go ahead and line it up and stitch across the top of that. And you'll just repeat this process all the way to the top of the tree. course, when you get to the star, you do the same process. You just place it where you want it and stitch across. Finally, we'll go ahead and trim off some of our threads that ended up on the top of the project or out the side. And then if you want, you can also trim the threads on the back. Of course, it doesn't really matter too much, but it's nice to kind of clean it up a little bit and shake it off. So now, as you can see, there are tiny holes through the cardstock, and then the front of it has your little three-dimensional Scrappy Christmas tree. To finally make it into a card, you simply fold it in half, and I like to be super careful so that it's accurate. And then on the inside of the card, you can write whatever note you want to your loved one. Thank you for watching. I hope you might be inspired to make your own homemade Christmas card using some of your fabric scraps and your sewing machine. I think it's a great way to share your love of quilting with the ones around you. Of course, you can feel free to write any sort of heartfelt message on the inside of the card and send it to friends near and far. For lots more quilting tips, tricks, and inspiration, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and also check out homemadeemilyjane.com.